Hello and welcome. You're watching Campaign Chronicles, France 24's regular countdown to the French presidential election. And for that, I'm joined by our French politics editor, Mark Perelman, and our media editor, James Creedon. Good evening to you both.
Good evening.
Mark, let's start with you. There were some vicious exchanges lately between President Nicolas Sarkozy and one of his rivals for the election.
Yes, absolutely. And the smell, the whiff of scandal has been with Nicolas Sarkozy for several weeks. And Eva Joly, the Green candidate, who's a former magistrate, lashed at Nicolas Sarkozy in recent days, saying essentially that he's trying to be re-elected, not to be president, but to shield himself from potential prosecution in some of the most explosive scandals in recent years, especially two of them. One, the so-called Betancourt scandal, with allegations that Nicolas Sarkozy may have benefited from illegal financial donations from the Laurel heiress, Liliane Betancourt, several years ago. The other being that he was somewhat involved in a shady arms deal with Pakistan, with kickbacks that may have come back in the 1990s. And yesterday night, clearly irate Nicolas Sarkozy responded to Eva Joly. Let's take a listen to Nicolas Sarkozy.
First, I don't have to answer to Madame Joly. When you repeat the accusations she made, you should in fact bring new elements, ask her for facts, and then I'll explain myself. With all these rumours, malicious gossip, the aim's to destroy me, to demolish me just because the person has nothing else to say, and we're here 3 weeks before the election. Well, allow me to ignore it. It's worthless.
So, clearly irate Nicolas Sarkozy. However, Eva Joly, who's been for years an investigating judge who went after the top echelon of the French political and business world, is not someone who backs down. And she, after Nicolas Sarkozy reacted, went again against the president. Let's take a listen.
He can't hide behind the fact that he despises me. It's not enough. He will have to explain himself regarding the dozens of witnesses who all say the same thing. So, Mr. Sarkozy, you can despise me all you like, but you have to explain yourself.
So Eva Joly hasn't been doing too well in the polls, Mark. And the latest figures are also not so good for Nicolas Sarkozy.
No, they are worrying. We've had 4 polls since yesterday, and they all show the same worrying trend for the president, meaning that he is behind his main rival, François Hollande, in 3 of those polls. We're seeing figures for one of them, and he's way behind in round 2 of the election. And why is it important? Because Nicolas Sarkozy had... It's a huge gap, but it's the round 1 figures that are really interesting, because Nicolas Sarkozy had managed to surge ahead of François Hollande in the first round, albeit slightly, but nevertheless, he thought it was really important to come out on top in round 1 so you could attract more voters in round 2. But the fact that he's falling behind again, François Hollande, at this juncture, 9 days before round 1, is really worrying, because this is not the plan. The Sarkozy people have told us again and again, if he comes out on top in the first round, you'll see centrist voters will flock to Nicolas Sarkozy. But if he is behind and François Hollande maintains his level, it's going to be mission nearly impossible for Nicolas Sarkozy.
Some very interesting polling figures there. Another candidate who's been struggling of late is centrist leader François Bayrou. After surging to 15% of voting intentions, he's now barely reaching 10%. Well, Bayrou was in Tours tonight to try and pump up his supporters, try and convince them that he can still pull off an upset. France 24's reporter Luke Brown was there.
There's been a lot of talk in recent days about which of the big 2 candidates François Bayrou could end up eventually supporting if he doesn't make it to the second round. No chance of that, despite many of the compliments that he's been receiving in the recent days and weeks. He's stubbornly rejecting those unofficial advances. Nicolas Sarkozy and François Hollande, he says, are both lying to the French voters, making promises they can't possibly keep. For François Bayrou, then, his goal does remain ensuring that French voters actually have a choice different to the one that many observers are predicting come the second round of the election. Throughout the campaign, François Bayrou says he has been the only candidate to tell French voters the truth. However, that truth is somewhat hard to swallow. To get France out of the current crisis, he said, it's going to take a lot of hard work and a lot of sacrifices. Many do agree that François Bayrou has had the right diagnostic to the current current crisis. However, telling the truth hasn't yet won him that many votes.
And now to a candidate who's keen to make a name for himself. Polls predict he'll get less than 2% of the vote in the presidential election. Nicolas Dupont-Aignan is a firm believer in more protectionism, and he says France should abandon the euro. Well, James Andre and Clovis Casali met with this right-wing politician who stands somewhere between President Nicolas Sarkozy and far-right leader Marine Le Pen.
So where is it? Where are they? Show me, I don't know.
Nicolas Dupont-Aignan has no time to waste. First presidential campaign for this right-wing candidate who failed to qualify in 2007. A Eurosceptic who's organised a meeting in a Paris suburb with workers worried about their factory being relocated in Slovakia or Asia. Dupont-Aignan blames Brussels for not defending the interests of French companies.
The market's difficult, very slow, and the European Commission in Brussels has signed a deal with South Korea. It's opened the European market, but not the Korean one, so it's an unfair deal. It's outrageous.
5 years ago, Nicolas Dupont-Aignan broke away from the UMP ruling party to found his own. But he's struggling to compete with Nicolas Sarkozy and Marine Le Pen, the two right-wing heavyweights in France. Besides, he shares some of their key views, which doesn't help to build a strong party identity. You say more protectionism is urgent because of China, but Nicolas Sarkozy says exactly the same.
Yes, except that he, like the Socialist Party, voted in favour of all the treaties to get rid of our borders. Worse, they supported the Lisbon Treaty, which got rid of France's veto in trade negotiations conducted by Brussels. In other words, we have politicians who talk a lot and do nothing.
You go as far as to call François Hollande and Nicolas Sarkozy fraudsters, so it means it's out of the question for you to join a UMP government if Sarkozy is re-elected in a few weeks?
I'm running because I'm sick of watching fraudsters, doctors if you will, who are supposed to cure patients but in fact just spill their blood.
Harsh words from Dupont-Aignan, desperate to make himself heard by all means. For the time being, he's extremely low in the polls, with less than 2%.
And now for more on the presidential campaign underway, I'm joined by our media editor, James Creedon. Hi, James.
Good evening, Lana.
And you've got the latest from the social media and from the press about this. In France, there's a law that forbids exit poll results from being broadcast on election day before 8 p.m. And that's when partial results start coming out, usually. But Belgian television is now saying it will make them available.
That's right. This could really change everything from 5 years ago, not just the fact that foreign media are prepared now to come out with the results before France. I mean, that would have been the case.
The information will be out there, basically.
That's right. And but also with social media now, it is much easier for this information to be transmitted across French society and to be perhaps then taken by French media. So there is this debate going on at the moment. And if we have a look online just to see what some of the reaction is, the Huffington Post, why the results should not be published before 8 p.m. They are very much defending this law, which forbids the publishing of exit polls. They say, look, it's about democracy. You still people voting after 6:30, between 6:30, when the first exit poll results can possibly emerge, because it takes a while to get them together. Between 6:30 and 8 p.m., you know, the people who go to vote, could they be influenced by what they hear in terms of the exit poll results? And so they say, look, this is a real risk. You know, we should be careful. We shouldn't do this. Now, interestingly, Rolling News Channel editors were interviewed about this today by the L'Express magazine media editor. This is Albert Ripamonti, who we know well here at France 24, and Hervé Beroud. Now, they both said that they will stick to this rule. They will not broadcast anything before 8 p.m., despite the fact that Belgian television has said they will do that from 6:30 onwards. So saying, look, we need to respect this law. Now, they do talk about other areas of red tape in French legislation regarding the elections. For example, this infamous law where each candidate needs to be given equal airtime in the weeks leading up to the election. They say actually on that count that it's anti-democratic. It kills democracy. Too much equality kills equality. I don't know what you think of that, Mark.
One reason why they're saying we won't do it before 8 o'clock is that you'll be slapped with a heavy fine if you publish something before 8 o'clock. So behind
That's
the
an important
democratic
point as
agreement,
well.
there's also a financial one that we should never forget.
Now, another point that was made about this, which I think is worth making, was made on by Opinion Way pollsters. Now, they said, look, let's be honest here. You've got only a sliver of the population that actually use Twitter regularly. And of that population, those who will actually vote between 6:30 p.m. and 8 p.m., it is negligible. So this election will not be Twitterized or Twitterisé, as they point out here on the Europe 1 Le Lab website. So they're saying, look, storm in a teacup, this isn't really a major concern.
Next, the French League Against Racism and Anti-Semitism, the LICRA, has come out with a provocative video.
That's right. I'm not sure if we'll have time to actually look at it, but I'll explain what happened.
In a few minutes.
We'll take a quick look at it then. It's not very flattering for Marine Le Pen.
Bit of a shocker there, Marine Le Pen transforming into her father.
I.e. plus ça change, as they say in France. Nothing changes.
All right, thanks very much for that. James Creedon, our media editor, Mark Perelman, our politics editor at France 24. That was Campaign Chronicles.